friendship, I want to mention that Patrick gave our first Harvard lecture. I was accused by Monsanto of introducing an alien concept called organic farming to India, as if genetic engineering was homegrown. And so we decided annually to hold a Harvard lecture. Harvard was, he was sent to India as the economic botanist, the chief agricultural scientist, because in those days they didn't have a discipline called agriculture. It was called economic botany, when you use botany for economic purposes. He was sent to India in 1905 to improve Indian agriculture, which in effect meant introducing chemicals to agriculture. And Howard says, I arrived, found the soils were fertile, didn't need chemical fertilizers, found there were no pests in the field, and so I decided to turn the Indian peasant and the pest into my teacher. Organic farming formally got named as organic farming after he wrote the book, The Agricultural Testament. The Soil Association was inspired by that. The Rodial Institute in the US was inspired by that. And when we started to celebrate on Gandhi's birthday a non-violent way of farming, and we called it the Harvard Lecture, Patrick was our first Harvard lecturer because of the intimate link with the Soil Association that Indian farming has had. I also want to thank very, very warmly Maurice Strong for all you've done to put on the agenda the issues we can still struggle for. And I'm so glad you said what the only measure of success at the formal level in Copenhagen is mandatory commitments, not a political circus. We have enough of that in the world. Something more serious is at stake, and a more serious commitment is needed. Now the interesting thing is, in this period since '92, when we actually got an international treaty on climate change, we also got another treaty called the Convention on Biological Diversity, which has sustainable agriculture in it. But just like organic farming, natural farming is the orphan of the climate discussion, it even became the orphan of the biodiversity discussion. And both have now a common perversion to them, which I believe only movements can address. And the perversion is, take a problem, there's a positive solution to it in the case that we are discussing organic farming, but don't address the positive solution. Take the negative, take pollution, and say, now let's see how we can trade in pollution and make more money out of it. If the problem was biodiversity erosion, then let's find ways for the predators of biodiversity, for the pirates of biodiversity, to somehow make more money out of that. And this disease of making money at any cost, I think is something that we want and need to address. I think over the last few decades, all of us who've been working on ecological farming have also realized that ecological farming is a solution to climate change. Systems that are contributing to climate instability are also systems that are contributing to hunger. And yet, at every point, systems that make hunger grow and make the climate instability grow are offered as solutions to both. And that's part of what we need to address. I've written a book called Soil Not Oil, and the title came out again out of a speech I gave at the conference that Soil Association had organized, and I think it was the first in this process. I mean, this is what started the discussion. And the book, Soil Not Oil, is basically about the transition from a fossil fuel-centered way of thinking, a way of practicing agriculture, to a soil-based way of thinking, and a soil-based agriculture, where the living soil becomes the measure of right farming. Serving the soil becomes the measure of producing food. Over the last 25 years, as we've practiced organic farming, I realized our only duty is to serve the soil and all her millions of organisms. The rest she will look after. We don't have to design the output. We just have to serve as maintainers of life in the soil. There are a few copies available. It could be used for biofuel. Now, of course, they're talking, the approval for potato in Germany. I remember when the debate was there on the genetically engineered potato, the government responded and said, it's not food, it's going to be for furniture and industrial starch. They want us to be in a world of biomass where you can make a door, run your car, and feed yourself with the same anonymous biomass. And of course, human beings will be last in line because industry will always have first priority. They have more purchasing power, they have more ability to lobby and change rules, etc. There's a second myth associated with this, and that is that fossil fuels are at the heart of growth, and growth is at the heart of removing poverty and hunger. My country is such a dramatic example of how this is not true. We've grown at 9% for the last few years. Our hunger and poverty has grown even higher levels. India is now the capital of hunger in the world. Per capita consumption has dropped from 170 kilograms to 150 kilograms in the 15 years while we were shooting up in GNP and GDP measurement. So growth does not lead to hunger and poverty removal. And the use of fossil, the tree can be there, diverse species can be grown on your farm. Nature's cycle thrives on diversity. External input chemical agriculture requires monocultures, just as much as fascism requires monocultures. I call industrial agriculture the fascism of the land, where you have to have monocultures. It's a monoculture of the mind, creating monocultures of the farms. So if you travel the world where agriculture has been industrialized, you will see miles and miles and miles of maize. Then you'll see miles and miles and miles of canola. You'll see miles and miles and miles of soya. You come to the tiny arid farms of India, which have not been destroyed by the Green Revolution, which was the name given to chemical agriculture when it was introduced in India. What we find is every farmer's field has 200 species in beautiful cooperation and harmony with each other. The trees are there, the livestock is there, and each of them is completing a cycle of renewal. The monoculture has been presented as having brought India out of hunger. It's not true, because we produce more rice and wheat at the cost of everything else. The individual farms went from mixed farming to monocultures, and different regions that grew different crops, the millets, the maize, the pulses, the oilseeds, all became large-scale monoculture of rice and wheat. And if you only grow rice and wheat, you will have more rice.